Hey, I'm Stephanie, and welcome to Books and Bubbly. This is the playlist where I drink something bubbly while talking about a book that I get all bubbly about. And today I'm going to be reviewing Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I do want to give a warning that there are going to be spoilers in this review. If you want a spoiler-free version of this review, please check out my What I Read in January video. But let's go ahead and see what this promised. Authors June Hayward and Athena Liu were supposed to be twin rising stars. But Athena's a literary darling. June Hayward is literally nobody. Who wants stories about basic white girls, June thinks. So when June witnesses Athena's death in a freak accident, she acts on impulse. She steals Athena's just-finished masterpiece, an experimental novel about the unsung contributions of Chinese laborers during World War I. So what if June edits Athena's novel and sends it to her agent as her own work? So what if she lets her new publisher rebrand her as Juniper Song, complete with an ambiguously ethnic author photo? Doesn't this piece of history deserve to be told, whoever the teller? That's what June claims, and the New York Times bestseller list seems to agree. But June can't get away from Athena's shadow, and emerging evidence threatens to bring June's stolen success down around her. As June races to protect her secret, she discovers exactly how far she will go to keep what she thinks she deserves. With its totally immersive first-person voice, Yellowface grapples with questions of diversity, racism, and cultural appropriation, as well as the terrifying alienation of social media. R.F. Kuang's novel is timely, razor-sharp, and eminently readable. So this was not what I was expecting, but I was pleasantly surprised with this. This is absolutely wild, it's diabolical, and so wonderfully unhinged. I actually just want to read Constant Wu's praise on the inside cover because I think it's spot on. Reading Yellowface felt like being inside a wild, brutal, psychological knife fight with a deranged clown. A merciless satire that left me screaming inside, from both its horror and humor. I just thought that captured the book pretty perfectly. I mean, this is dark humor, it's satire. I could not put this down. I think I read it in a day. I stayed up until 1:15 in the morning, the night I started reading it, just because I was so hooked. So, like the back cover copy talks about, we have our main character June, or Juniper, and she's a struggling author. It's obviously not her mediocre talent that's not getting her major publishing deals. It's that the publishing world is so unfair to white people. Do you see what you're in for? June is honestly a very interesting character. I mean, she is awful and irredeemable, and the mental gymnastics that she has to do to make herself look like the victim and the winner at the same time is truly something to behold. But it does make for a very unique character. She sucks, but she is interesting. June is insecure, but also arrogant. She's jealous, pretentious, self-obsessed, obnoxious, deluded, and honestly, her thoughts and actions are pretty grotesque at times. It is both fascinating and horrifying to watch her dig herself deeper into this hole, yet still think that she is the best thing since sliced bread. Her justifications for her actions were appalling, yet quite darkly humorous. I wanted to punch June in the throat, but I was also gleefully awaiting for her to make yet another blunder and watch her suffer for it. So we know at the beginning of the book that June is aboard the struggle bus. She hates that she hasn't written a New York Times bestseller, she hates that she's stuck teaching others how to write, and she is seething and supremely jealous of her friend Athena's success. So she and Athena are frenemies, as not many other people really seem to like them, so they kind of orbit each other. Athena is very popular and famous, but doesn't have a close-knit group of friends. June is hoping that some of Athena's fame and talent might rub off on her, and Athena probably enjoys hanging out with June so she can brag and feel really good about herself and her success. So they go off and they find a bar and drink it, and then they go back to Athena's apartment. June tells her, oh, can I go use your bathroom? And yeah, go ahead. But June does not make it to the bathroom. She stops in Athena's office and does some snooping, and comes across a manuscript that Athena just finished. Athena is typically very secretive about her writing, and so no one really knows that this exists yet. And then they end up having like this pancake eating contest, and Athena chokes to death. I will forever be cutting my pancakes into toddler-sized bites after reading that scene. Now, I will say, like, it's not like June just stands back and watches. She does try to help her. She's trying to do the Heimlich maneuver, but ultimately she is unable to save Athena. She is pretty distraught and traumatized at witnessing Athena die, but it also did not stop her from stealing Athena's manuscript on the way out. June thinks that Athena would want her to polish it and publish it. The world deserves to have this book, even if it has June's name on it. I mean, I'm not sure Athena would actually agree. And June is going to be doing some rewriting and revision, so it's basically like she wrote the entire thing herself. It's about a topic she knows nothing about, but damn it, she is going to make this happen. She even goes so far as to say, taking Athena's manuscript felt like reparations, payback for the things Athena took from me. Like, damn, June! But June rationalizes that it's okay for her to steal Athena's book about the forgotten Chinese laborers from World War I and sends it off to her agent. It's fantastic. There even ends up being a bidding war, and June is high-fiving herself. She's done it. She's made it. She wrote something truly amazing. Well, I mean, not exactly, because she kind of just finished a project and touched up something amazing and then slapped her own name on it. Like, June is that kid in a group project that you absolutely hated because they showed up, said their 2 lines during the presentation, and acted like they did all the heavy lifting and should get top billing for all the work that they put into this. Now, part of her touching up the story involves whitewashing a lot of the story. Like, on page 43, we have... So page 43, we also soften some of the white characters. No, it's not as bad as you think. Athena's original text is almost embarrassingly biased. The French and the British soldiers are cartoonishly racist. I get she's trying to make a point about discrimination within the Allied front, but these scenes are so hackneyed that they defy belief. It throws the reader out of the story. Instead, we switch one of the white bullies to a Chinese character, and one of the more vocal Chinese laborers to a sympathetic white farmer. This adds the complexity, the humanistic nuance that perhaps Athena was too close to the project to see. In the original draft, several laborers are driven to take their own lives by the mistreatment at the hands of the British, and one man hangs himself in the captain's dugout. The captain, upon finding the body, tells an interpreter to order the rest of the laborers to hang themselves in their own dugouts if they must, for we don't like such a mess in ours. The whole scene, apparently, was lifted straight from the historical record. Athena's copy had handwritten notes in the margin emphasizing, comment on this in the acknowledgments. Can't make this shit up. My God. It's a powerful scene, and I felt a curdle of horror when I read it for the first time. But Daniela, her editor, thinks it's too over the top. I get that they're army men and they're uncouth, but this feels like tragedy rhymes with corn. She comments, cut for pacing? And then there was also a piece on page 46. So she's saying so her editor is Daniela. One of Daniela's favorite passages are the ones that are original to me. There's one part, for instance, where a poor French family wrongly accuses a group of Chinese laborers for stealing 100 francs from their house. The laborers, determined to make a good impression of their race and nation, collect 200 francs among them and gift it to the family even though it's clear they are innocent. Athena's draft only made a brief mention of the wrongful accusation, but my version turns it into a heartwarming illustration of Chinese virtue and honesty. So, I've labored for years to learn my craft. Perhaps the core idea of this novel wasn't mine, but I'm the one who rescued it, who freed the diamond from the rough. But the thing is, no one will ever understand how much I put into this novel. If news ever breaks that Athena wrote the first draft, the whole world will look at the work I did, all those beautiful sentences I produced, and all they'll ever see is Athena Liu. But no one ever has to know, do they? And then it kind of just goes on because, like, June isn't a total idiot. She knows that some of Athena's writing will shine through, so she tries to, like, cut it off at the pass. She mentions in interviews how inspired she was by Athena as she worked on this new novel, how she channeled Athena and kept her memory alive. That's why it might sound like her. Because on page 47, so I play up our connection. I mention her name in every interview. My grief over her death becomes a cornerstone of my origin story. All right, maybe I exaggerate the details a bit. Quarterly drinks become monthly, sometimes weekly drinks. I only have 2 selfies of us saved on my phone, which I never meant to share because I hate how frumpy I look beside her. But I upload them on my Instagram under a black and white filter and pen a touching tribute poem to accompany it. I've read all of her work and she mine. Often we traded ideas. I saw her as my greatest inspiration, and her feedback on my drafts was foundational to my growth as a writer. This is what I tell the public. See, the closer we seem, the less mysterious that resemblances to her work will appear. Athena's fingerprints are all over this project. I don't wipe them off. I just provide an alternative explanation for why they're there. My God, girl. Then her plan hits a snag when she finds out that Athena's mom is donating Athena's writing notebooks that might contain some notes for this newest manuscript, The Last Front, and she's donating them to Yale. June cannot let this happen, and basically goes over and dissuades Athena's mom from going through with the donation. Girl, you are manipulating a grieving mother and you don't see anything wrong with your actions? So at this point, the publisher then reaches out, wondering like, hey, how would you feel about publishing under a different name since, the book you wrote under your own name didn't do so well? Maybe we want to distance that from you. And maybe we go with something that's racially ambiguous? Because June's middle name is Song, and only because her mom was a hippie, so they decide to publish it under Juniper Song and take a new author photo that is somewhat hard to tell what ethnicity Juniper is. Now, June agrees to all of this, but then puts her foot down and does not agree to do a sensitivity read when that idea is floated by an assistant named Candace. June knows Candace does not like her, but she's always professional, so it'd be hard for June to prove any wrongdoing there. So on page 64, we have... Okay, so on page 64, maybe she, Candace, maybe she knew Athena. Maybe she's one of those wannabe writers, daylighting as an underpaid, overworked publishing junior staff member with a China-inspired manuscript of her own, and she's jealous I've made it big when she hasn't. I get that. In publishing, that is a universal dynamic, but that's not my problem. So June writes an email. Again, I'm quite comfortable with the research I did in preparation for this book. I don't find it necessary to delay things for a sensitivity read at this point in production, especially since we have a tight turnaround for review copies to early readers. Send. That should be the end of it. But an hour later, my inbox pings again. It's Candace, doubling down. She's addressed the email to me, Daniela, and the entire publicity team. Dear all, I want to emphasize again how important I feel it is that we get a sensitivity reader for this project. In this current climate, readers are bound to be suspicious of someone writing outside of their lane, and for good reason. I understand this would slow down production, but a sensitivity read would protect June from accusations of both cultural appropriation and, worse, cultural leeching. It would show that June meant to represent the Chinese diaspora community in good faith. Jesus Christ! Cultural appropriation? Cultural leeching? What is her problem? Girl, Candace is actually Asian. But then it gets worse because Candace is taken off the project for kind of doing this pushback. But that doesn't stop her from voicing her own personal opinion on her own personal Goodreads account and gives the book a 1-star rating. June is furious. She sends that review to Candace's boss. And this just kind of pissed me off. Candace should be allowed to review books on her own time. So on page 76, man, I tabbed a lot of stuff this review. So yeah, she's sent it off to Daniela, who is Candace's boss. And I know Daniela's email voice well enough by now to tell when she's irritated. Curt, choppy sentences. She didn't even sign off. Daniela is pissed, and they're going to handle it internally. Good. Hot vindication coils in my gut. Candace deserves it. Putting the sensitivity read kerfuffle aside, what kind of psychopath would fuck around with an author's feelings like this? Shouldn't she know how stressful and terrifying it is to launch a book? I bask for a moment, imagining what kind of chaos I've sown over at Eden's office this morning. And though I would never say this out loud about a fellow woman, the industry is tough enough as it is. I hope I got that bitch fired. I mean, June, come on. June is absolutely delusional. But she's finally successful and is enjoying the view from the top. She's making friends with other established authors and even becomes a mentor, though her mentee is quite surprised when she realizes that June is white and not Asian since it's an Asian program. June is then surprised to see some backlash from creators and reviewers that she actually likes. A woman named Adele Sparks Sato, who June loved because she would trash on Athena's work, has now come after June's work and basically labels it white savior trash. Other critics join in, but June just dismisses them and thinks of them as trolls in their mom's basement. They're just jealous haters. She recovers a bit from this backlash and goes to some speaking events and even goes to speak with the local chapter of the Chinese American Social Club. She does not realize that most of its members only speak Chinese. I don't think it's actually said if it's either Cantonese or Mandarin, but when she gets picked up, the lady asks, how good is your Chinese? And maybe some of these people might have family that were Chinese laborers. It does not go well, and the woman who organized it is very embarrassed, having not realized that June isn't Asian. Though things are starting to look up when she finds out that a production studio wants to buy the rights and is looking at making a movie version. She's really excited until she realizes there's a lot of focus on the white characters here. The producers who meet with her are talking oh, could we get Tom Holland or Benedict Cumberbatch to play this one character that is mentioned one time? They're only on page once. They're only on screen once. They then poke fun at Asian actors and how bad their English would be. June thinks, though, isn't that kind of fitting given how the laborers wouldn't have had great English at the time either? They do not agree with her and don't think that would sell well. So June is feeling a bit bummed, but remaining hopeful, but her hopes are completely dashed when a new Twitter account starts posting that June stole the book. The account is at Athena Lou's Ghost. Her agent tells her, don't worry, these are all allegations, right? If she didn't steal it, she has nothing to worry about, right? So in reality, June has a lot to worry about. She uses some connections to find out who the ghost account is, and her brother-in-law is able to track the IP address to a neighborhood, which is good enough because June, after finding out what address or what neighborhood it's in, she knows who it is. Athena's ex-boyfriend lives in that neighborhood. So she ends up meeting up with him, and he tells her that he knows Athena wrote the story. He was with her when she started writing notes and outlines for it and just doing some of the research. He blackmails her, but she kind of outsmarted him because she started recording the conversation as soon as they sat down, so it proves that he was trying to blackmail her and coerce her into giving money. So he backs off, but so does the spotlight. New books are coming out. Things are starting to change. June is no longer as special as she was. June craves being important and famous and adored, and so her agent is basically publish something new then. Problem is, she doesn't know what. So what does she do? She steals from Athena yet again. She still has those notebooks that she stole from Athena's mom that were going to be donated, and she starts flipping through them. She gets some inspiration from some paragraphs that were just freely written and uses that as a jumping off point to write her new book, Mother Witch. So around this point, we also find out, when June said that these were reparations, we find out what Athena actually stole from June, and this was years ago, back when they were in college. So this part is about SA, but we aren't given many details. I will say it's not really described, it's more alluded to. You know what's going on, but you don't have to read about it in description. Basically, June was hanging out with this guy at college. They liked each other, but one night they drank a lot and she doesn't remember much else. She woke up with her clothes on, but some hickeys and bruises, and starts to kind of have some memories from the night before and starts having panic attacks. Athena is there to comfort her and helps her with her anxiety, but she also proves herself to be a trauma vampire and steals June's experience and puts it in a story for the school literary magazine. Which sucks. That was awful for June to have her pain used that way, to have her pain publicized that way without her consent. But at the same time, two wrongs don't make a right here. But Mother Witch isn't a mega hit, it's moderately successful, until Adele Spark Sato rears her ugly head and calls June out directly. She knows for sure that this was stolen from Athena, because Athena wrote the introductory paragraph at the Asian American Writers Collective workshop. There is proof. There are photos from this event. There is no way that June can get out of this by saying, oh, it's coincidental, or oh, I was just inspired by Athena. This is actual theft. June's high-profile friends stop responding to her text. She's told she's no longer going to be a mentor to young writers. Her agent pitches her some basically ghostwriting work, as the outline would be there, and she does seem to excel at building stories like that. June is offended and doesn't want to stoop that low, even though she really would excel at doing that. So she ends up teaching in the summer at the Young AAPI Writers Workshop. At first, her students kind of like her, but then June overhears them talking about a plagiarism check against June's work and Athena's, and they go so far as to wonder, did June actually kill Athena? Was this actually not a weird accident? June is pissed and takes her anger out on a student by belittling her and humiliating her in class. I kind of just want to read this section too. So this is 247. So she's asking another student about Skylar's story, the student that she's going to be mad about. Rexy swallows. I liked it. On what grounds? Well, it's interesting. Interesting is a word people use when they can't think of anything better to say. Be specific, Rexy. That sets the tone for the rest of the morning. I used to think that mean teachers were a special kind of monster, but it turns out that cruelty comes naturally. Also, it's fun. Teenagers, after all, are unformed identities with undeveloped brains. No matter how clever they are, they still don't know much about anything, and it's easy to embarrass them for their ill-prepared remarks. Skylar gets the worst of it. Technically, her story, a whodunit set in San Francisco's Chinatown, in which none of the witnesses will cooperate with the police because they have their own secrets and community codes of honor, is not bad. The writing is strong, the conceit is interesting, and there's even a clever twist at the end that makes you reevaluate every previous word uttered by the characters. It's very impressive for a high schooler. Still, her inexperience shows. Skylar's exposition is clumsy in parts. She makes use of quite a few contrived coincidences to move the story along, and she hasn't figured out how to toe the line between tense and histrionic dialogue. I could gently correct these tendencies while encouraging Skylar to think up the solutions herself. And then again, there's a lawyer on the scene out of nowhere. I tap the page. Do lawyers grow on trees, Skylar? Maybe they have a spidey sense for marital discomfort. Then, do Chloe and Christopher have a weird incest thing going on? Or is that just how you've chosen to portray all of their sibling interactions? Then, does every single Chinese person in this neighborhood know each other? Or did you just find that convenient for the plot? Then, I wonder if there's any better imagery you can use for sexual tension than literally biting into a strawberry. Then, she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Really? By the end of it, I've convinced most of the class that Skylar's story is horrible. Whether they agree or whether they're scared of invoking my ire, I don't care. And so basically, Skylar is crying at the end, and I've won. It's a pathetic victory, sure, but it's better than sitting here and suffering their mocking glares. That hot, vicious satisfaction stays with me through the rest of the morning. I conclude the critique circle, assign homework, and watch them flee wordlessly out the door. What a bitch. But June is called out on it. She's reminded that there's an anti-bullying policy by the head of the program. But before she can be fired, she makes up a lie that, oh, my mom is sick and I actually have to be taking my leave. And so it makes it easy for both of them to kind of save face. The book then gets really meta when June realizes her next book will be about this entire situation. Fictionalized, of course. But Athena's ghost comes back to taunt her. There's a new Instagram account with pictures of Athena, alive and holding June's books. It's not the ex-boyfriend behind it this time, and the account keeps taunting June and asks if she misses Athena. It escalates until she asks June to meet her at the Exorcist Stairs, a place that was very special to Athena and June. June is terrified. Could it be possible that Athena is still alive, or is she losing her mind? So she goes, and she's not losing her mind, but she does hear Athena's voice and confesses to stealing her work. We then find out that Candace was behind the account and basically used AI and Photoshop to make the pictures and mess with June. June is enraged that she's going to be finished. This is the end of her career, and even contemplates killing Candace. Candace is a fighter, though, and June is the one who ends up being hurt. Candace runs off with her taped confession and writes the story of a lifetime. June's reputation is ruined. Or is it? Because on page 316, I will always be the writer who stole Athena Liu's legacy, the psycho, jealous, racist white woman who stole the Asian girl's work. It's hard to imagine a more total, eviscerating defeat. But my mind does a funny thing then. I don't spiral into despair. I don't feel the telltale symptoms of an incoming panic attack. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm utterly calm, zen-like. I feel alive. I find myself composing sentences then, dreaming up the turns of phrase, sketching out the contours of a counter-narrative. I am the victim of a dreadful hoax. I was cyberbullied, stalked, and manipulated into thinking I was going mad. Candace Lee took my love for my deceased friend and turned it into something ugly and horrible. Candace is the one who exploited me for her art, not the other way around. Because if Candace is showing off those tapes, then she's revealing that she was at the Exorcist steps the night I fell. Then there's no question who that anonymous EMT caller was, and that gives me an opening to make my own accusations. The truth is fluid. There's always another way to spin the story, another wrench to throw into the narrative. I have learned this now, if nothing else. Candace may have won this round, but I won't let her raise my voice. I will tell our audience what they ought to believe. I will undermine all of her assertions, ascribe new motivations, and alter the sequence of events. I will present a new account that is compelling precisely because it aligns with what our audience, deep down, really wants to believe. That I have done no wrong, and that this is, once again, an instance of nasty, selfish, over-demanding people fabricating a tale of racism where there isn't one. This is cancel culture gone deadly. Look at my cast. Look at my hospital bills. I will craft and sell a story about how the pressures of publishing have made it impossible for white and non-white authors alike to succeed. About how Athena's success was entirely manufactured. How she was only ever a token. About how my hoax, because let's frame it as a hoax, not theft, was really a way to expose the rotten foundations of this entire industry. About how I am the hero in the end. And that is the end of the book. Again, this is just something else, and I thought it was something else in a good way. I absolutely love this. I think the characters are super complex, and they are definitely not good people. June throws herself a pity party at a moment's notice, but also thinks that certain work is beneath her. But then we also have Athena, who isn't the picture-perfect girl that her readers are sold. There's a point where June brings up the fact that Athena doesn't understand that some things are super expensive, as she's never had to worry about things like that. These characters are complex and they have serious flaws, and both of them are thieves. Athena is a trauma vampire who likes to steal others' stories, but June also steals others' stories, and she's basically an idea thief. And both of them are honestly so entitled. Athena does not acknowledge her privilege and class, and June feels she is owed success and fame simply because she is passionate about writing. The social commentary around the publishing industry, identity, performing for social media, cancel culture, and chasing validation were at times uncomfortable to read, but it was also very eye-opening and true to life. The characters and situations in this are exasperating, but they are supposed to be. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I thought this was brilliant, audacious, and gripping. I really couldn't put it down. I loved the satire, the humor, and the horror, in a sense, with the questions that this book kind of raises. So I really enjoyed this. Now, I do want to add that I did listen to a critique by Read with Cindy, whose content I really enjoy, and I found that she brought up some really good points that differ from my own, and some insights about Kwong that added some context to some of the lower rated reviews that I would see on Goodreads. It was really interesting to see a critique that pointed out the similarities between Kwong and Athena in the story, and how Kwong's upbringing and affluence helped her have a very different publishing experience and a different understanding of wealth and privilege. Now, even though I liked the book, I did appreciate hearing the critique and the opinions that countered my own. But I couldn't stop reading this outlandish and in the best way possible kind of story. Like, if you have any book recommendations for books that are similar to this, with like unbelievably delusional main characters, I would love to hear about them. Please drop your recommendations in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for joining me at Books and Bubbly.